You know what's truly fascinating about people with extremely high IQs? They rarely look or act the way we're told to expect them to. If you watch movies or television, you're taught to picture someone who is obviously impressive. A hyper-confident, flawless genius who solves impossible problems out loud, effortlessly dominates every conversation, and makes absolutely sure that everyone else in the room is acutely aware of their superior intelligence. But if you look at decades of clinical psychology research, the real story is completely different. In fact, many of the behavioral patterns most commonly found in people with extremely high IQs don't look like intelligence at all to the untrained eye. Some of them actually look like the exact opposite. They look like hesitation, like social awkwardness, or even like a total lack of drive. What cognitive psychologists have found after studying highly gifted individuals is a profound truth. A genuinely high IQ doesn't just make a person smarter or faster at calculating numbers. It completely alters the entire architecture of how they process reality. It changes how they see, how they feel, and how they experience every single second of their lives. Because of that, their minds operate with an entirely different set of rules. Today, we are going to strip away the cinematic myths and look at the real, raw psychological science. We're going to break down the 5 specific, recognizable traits that research consistently uncovers in people with exceptionally high cognitive ability. And if you've ever felt strangely out of sync with the world around you, pay close attention, because the all traits on this list is something you might be struggling with right now without even realizing why. Let's start with trait number 1. They spend a massive amount of time alone. When people see a highly intelligent person withdrawing from social groups or spending their weekends in isolation, they immediately jump to conclusions. They assume the person is antisocial, lonely, or struggling with social anxiety. But psychology tells us a very different story. Highly intelligent people don't seek solitude because they dislike humanity. They seek it because their brains are wired to require it. Inside the human brain, the prefrontal cortex is the powerhouse responsible for complex reasoning, long-term planning, and deep reflection. In an exceptionally high IQ individual, this region works at an incredibly high intensity. Because it's constantly processing layers of data, it functions most effectively in quiet environments completely stripped of external noise and trivial distractions. For a high IQ mind, solitude isn't a state of loneliness, it is essential metabolic fuel. Consider a groundbreaking study published by the London School of Economics. Researchers analyzed a massive dataset to see how social interaction affects happiness. They found something that sounds completely backward at first. While the average person reports higher life satisfaction when they spend more time socializing with friends, highly intelligent individuals reported significantly lower life satisfaction from frequent social interactions. Their brains simply don't recharge the way most people's do. Trivial chit-chat and surface-level interactions don't provide them with a dopamine hit. Instead, social settings are often cognitively expensive. When a high IQ brain is in a room, it isn't just listening to the words being said. It is unconsciously analyzing body language, tracking hidden emotional undertones, calculating behavioral patterns, and processing the ambient environment all at once. They don't leave the party because they are unhappy. They leave because their cognitive battery has been completely drained by the sheer volume of data they just absorbed. This brings us directly to trait number 2. Their minds never fully switch off. If you ask an average person what they're thinking about during a quiet moment, they can often genuinely answer, "Nothing much." But for a person with an extremely high IQ, that answer is practically impossible. Their internal dialogue is a non-stop, 24/7 background process. It doesn't stop when they are resting. It doesn't stop late at night when they are desperately trying to sleep. And it certainly doesn't stop during activities that other people find deeply relaxing. There is always a background program running, turning over a theoretical problem, rewriting a conversation from 3 years ago, building a conceptual framework, or running complex mental simulations for scenarios that haven't even happened yet. The famous Polish psychologist Kazimierz Dąbrowski spent decades studying gifted adults and children. He developed a framework called the theory of positive disintegration, where he described what he called overexcitabilities. One of the most prominent forms is psychomotor overexcitability. In highly intelligent people, this isn't physical restlessness like pacing around a room. It is a relentless, organic internal energy that expresses itself entirely through mental activity. It is an intense, inescapable drive to think that simply lacks a natural off switch. Neuroscientific research conducted by Dr. Rex Young at the University of New Mexico provides a fascinating physical explanation for this. His team found that higher intelligence isn't just about faster processing speeds inside isolated pockets of the brain. Instead, individuals with exceptionally high IQs possess significantly richer, denser white matter connectivity between completely distant regions of the brain. Think of it like this. An average brain might have a fast highway connecting point A to point B. A high IQ brain has a massive, hyperconnected supergrid where point A is simultaneously communicating with points F and Z and Y. Because these distant ideas are constantly talking to each other, the brain is always finding unexpected patterns. Rest is incredibly difficult because the brain isn't malfunctioning. It is simply doing exactly what its advanced wiring built it to do. Trait 3. Hidden emotional intensity. Trait number 3 is one that catches almost everyone off guard. They feel things far more deeply than they show. There is a massive cultural stereotype that hyper-intelligent individuals are cold, robotic, and emotionally detached. We think of the clinical, analytical thinker who lives entirely in their head, completely immune to the messy world of human emotion. But empirical psychological research explicitly shatters this myth. People with significantly elevated IQs don't feel less. They actually tend to feel things with a raw, overwhelming intensity that average individuals rarely experience. Going back to Dąbrowski's research, he labeled this emotional overexcitability. It is a highly sensitive, amplified responsiveness to emotional stimuli. This means a high IQ individual can be profoundly, physically moved by a beautiful piece of classical music, a striking piece of art, a brilliant concept, or a subtle philosophical truth. But it also means they are devastatingly vulnerable to witnessing injustice, cruelty, or the quiet suffering of others. A landmark study published in the scientific journal Intelligence confirmed this exact phenomenon. Researchers discovered that higher measured IQ directly correlates with significantly greater emotional reactivity and deep psychological sensitivity to moral dilemmas, existential questions, and human behavior. So why do they seem so cold from the outside? Because their advanced cognitive systems are incredibly efficient at rationalizing and regulating what they feel. They understand that intense emotional outbursts are rarely logical or helpful in solving a crisis. They use their intellect as a protective shield, processing an overwhelming tidal wave of internal emotion through a lens of absolute logic. They bleed on the inside, but they present a calm, analytical surface to the world because it's the only way they know how to keep that emotional intensity from consuming them. Trait 4. The power of I don't know. Let's talk about trait number 4. Intellectual humility. They are completely comfortable saying, I don't know. We live in a culture where people love to pretend they have all the answers. If you turn on the news or scroll through social media, you will see a non-stop parade of people holding incredibly loud, aggressive opinions on topics they barely understand. We mistake this unearned confidence for intelligence. But in the realms of real psychology, the data shows a completely inverted pattern. The smartest people in the room are almost always the ones most eager to admit what they don't know. This is a direct reflection of a psychological phenomenon known worldwide as the Dunning-Kruger effect. This well-documented cognitive bias shows that people with low competence or limited knowledge in a specific domain are inherently prone to massive overconfidence. Why? Because they lack the cognitive depth required to see just how vast and complex that domain actually is. They read one article or watch one video and truly believe they've mastered the universe. Highly intelligent people, by contrast, possess an intimate, painful awareness of complexity. When they look at a problem, their brain doesn't just see the surface answer. It instantly maps out every exception, every historical nuance, every variable, and every single piece of data that is still missing. They don't say, "I don't know," out of fear, hesitation, or a lack of self-worth. They say it out of raw scientific precision. They respect the truth too much to pretend they have captured it fully. The next time you meet someone who holds an unshakable, absolute opinion on a complex topic without a shred of nuance, remember this: absolute certainty is almost never a trait of a truly exceptional mind. Trait 5. The hunger for depth. Trait number 5 hits on a deep, quiet struggle that many high IQ individuals carry their entire lives. They face an ongoing challenge to find people who think at their exact level of resolution. This is an incredibly delicate topic, because if an intelligent person mentions it out loud, they are instantly branded as arrogant, elitist, or conceited. But when we look at the clinical reality of their lived experiences, it isn't about feeling superior at all. It is about an intense, unfulfilled cognitive hunger. The brilliant psychologist Leta Hollingworth spent a vast portion of her career studying the lives of highly gifted adults. She coined a beautiful, heartbreaking term for this experience: stimulus poverty. It describes the profound, isolating frustration of a mind that simply cannot find sufficient cognitive challenge, abstract depth, or structural complexity in its immediate daily environment. Hollingworth observed that what looked like arrogance from the outside was actually a quiet, ongoing longing for real, substantive connection. A high IQ individual wants to talk to someone who can follow an abstract idea all the way down to its deepest foundations, challenge their assumptions, and build a complex theory with them without getting confused, offended, or bored. Because the vast majority of daily human conversation is naturally built around small talk, social updates, and surface-level events, highly intelligent people often walk away from interactions feeling completely empty and unstimulated. Over time, they learn a survival mechanism. They intentionally calibrate themselves down. They suppress their vocabulary, they hold back their true thoughts, and they keep their real observations hidden. The result? They appear aloof, quiet, or distant, while the most interesting parts of who they actually are never even enter the room. When you look at all 5 of these traits together, you realize something profoundly moving. Almost every single struggle of an exceptionally high IQ is consistently misread by the world. The person who desperately needs solitude is mislabeled as antisocial. The person whose hyperconnected mind can never stop running is mislabeled as chronically anxious. The person who feels the weight of the world with overwhelming intensity looks unexpectedly fragile. The person who possesses real intellectual humility looks uncertain. And the person who is simply searching for a conversation with real depth is branded as difficult or cold. But sometimes, what looks like a collection of quiet psychological difficulties is actually something incredibly beautiful. It is a rare, powerful mind doing exactly what it was built to do: process more, feel more, see deeper, and go further than the world around it. At its absolute core, an extremely high IQ is not a gold medal, a test score, or a badge of vanity. It is a profound, lifelong vulnerability. It is living with a remarkably thin filter between your soul and the raw, unfiltered complexity of the universe. It is a magnificent gift, but it is also an incredibly demanding weight to carry through an ordinary world. If the psychology we broke down today described your inner life, or gave words to a quiet experience you have been carrying alone for a very long time, please leave a comment down below and share which specific trait resonated with you the most. I read every single one of your stories. And if you know someone who needs to hear this validation today, send this video to them. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next deep dive into human psychology. Take care of your mind, and goodbye.